guys, it's Erica here from Big Cat Creative, and today I'm going to show you how to create those clickable drop-down FAQs or see more boxes in Squarespace. You can actually use these for anything around your site where you want to click to reveal more text, but using this drop-down feature for FAQs is a really common scenario because there's often way more text or written information that would be better organized and more aesthetically pleasing if it was hidden behind a clickable question. So this involves some coding, but it's really simple copy and paste code, so don't worry, it's pretty easy, but there are a couple of important notes before we start. The first is that this code is only available for people on the Squarespace business plan and up, because it involves putting a script code in the advanced code injection area, which is only available to those of you on the business plan and up, meaning that if you're on the Squarespace personal plan, you won't be able to achieve this code. I've linked the different Squarespace pricing plans below this video if you want to check those out. The second point is that this code will work on Squarespace 7.0 and 7.1, but if you are using Squarespace 7.0, it's important to turn off Ajax loading, as this may affect your code. So in 7.0, click on Design, Site Styles, and you're going to scroll down where it says Site Loading, and where it says Enable Ajax Loading, just make sure this is turned off, and click Save. And finally, a quick disclaimer, I did not write this code from scratch, and honestly I have no idea who did. I found it on the internet years ago and have been using it ever since, so if you need changes to it or need it to function differently, I'm not your girl to make those changes for you, but I do know that it works really well and it's easy to use, so I'm confident to share it with you guys today. So let's dive in. There are 3 different pieces to this setup. The first is some advanced code that we need to add to the advanced code injection area. The second is adding the FAQs or whatever you want to add onto your actual page. And then the third part is adding some CSS, but this part's optional and we'll talk through that. The first part is adding some advanced code. So on your website, click into Settings, click on Advanced, and then Code Injection. So you're going to see this note here that this is a premium feature like I mentioned before and is only available on business plans and upwards. So if you are on the personal plan, you won't be able to use this feature. For the code here, this is just a simple copy and paste code, and I've linked in the description below the blog post for this tutorial, and in that blog post I've added all of the codes. So you'll just need to go into there and copy the codes from the post. So the first one will look something like this, and this is for our header code injection area. So all you need to do is copy the code. Just make sure you grab that from the blog post, and I'm going to paste it here in the header. Click Save, and that is done. That's all of the advanced coding we need to do. Super easy, just simple copy and paste. One important thing to note when you're adding this code is that we're actually going to be using markdown blocks for our dropdowns. If you don't know what that means, you probably don't have to worry because you probably haven't used markdown blocks before. But if markdown blocks do ring a bell for you and you do think you may have blocks around your site that are markdown blocks, it's important to note that using this script code is going to affect every markdown block on your site. So if you do have other markdown blocks around your site, it's definitely worth keeping an eye on them, making sure that they don't look crazy after you put this code in, because they might turn into drop-down blocks depending on what sort of formatting you have inside of them. If you do have other markdown blocks around your site, you would actually want to put this code inside your header injection for specific pages only. Right now it's on the header code injection across your whole site, which is fine if you're not using any markdown blocks at the moment. But if you are using other markdown blocks around your site, I would remove this code from your header injection area and just add it to the injection of the pages where you want to edit the markdown block to be a drop-down FAQ. So for example, I'm going to build my drop-down FAQs just on the sales page, and I don't want the code to affect other markdown blocks on my site. I'm going to click this little cog icon, click Advanced, Page Header Code Injection, and paste it in there. Click Save on the page, and now you have the exact same code working for only one page instead of working across your whole site. If you are using markdown blocks across your whole site in other areas and you just want to target one page, then use that method. But if you are planning to only use markdown blocks for Dropdown FAQs, then definitely put it back in this area in your advanced settings, because then you won't have to add it to every single page that you're working on. You can just have it populating throughout your whole site. So it's really personal preference there, depending on how you have your existing site set up. Now we're going to head back and come into pages and click on the page that you want to add your FAQs drop down to. So I'm going to do it here on this test sales page. And I am working from Squarespace 7.1 right now, but this will all work exactly the same in Squarespace 7.0. So I'm going to open up this page to edit, and I'm going to click on the blue plus icon to add a block. And I'm actually going to add a markdown block, and this is what we're going to use to put in our FAQs. I'm going to type in my question, and then I'm going to put in some text for the answer. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the question section and just put my cursor right in before the section, and I'm going to type in 3 hash symbols and then put in a space, and it should change blue, and you will see the text actually change. So this has changed the text to heading 3. By putting those 3 hashes there, it's made this first line heading 3, and our code actually works with heading 3. So you have to use heading 3 for the question, and then for the answer you can use any font you want. You can use the styling options up here, or you can use the hashes to add different headings. So this would be heading 4, of course. The only thing you don't want to be using is heading 3, because the code recognizes heading 3 as the question, so that's going to be the clickable element. It should just look something like this. It's very simple. 3 hashes, a space, and your question, and then your answer below in whatever font you want. So you won't see any drop-down action yet because you can't actually see it inside the editor, but I will show you how it looks soon. You can also add as many of these as you want to on markdown blocks. So I'm going to copy this whole thing, and then I'm going to click enter a couple of times and paste it a few times. Now we have 4 questions and answers inside this one block. Let's just click out and save our page. And on refresh, we should be able to see this working properly. So you can see now the answers are hidden and the questions are clickable. So that's working perfectly. One thing worth noting is that if you do want to have 2 columns of questions, you can actually just add another markdown block. So click the plus again, add a markdown block. You can put in your questions and answers, however many you want. And you can actually click and drag it to be side by side. So I'm going to drag it up to the right hand side of my section. And now you can see that we have 2 columns. You can do this as many times as you want. It just depends on your design and what's going to work for you. 2 columns is pretty common, or you could have 3 columns. And then of course you can adjust the actual spacing of the section with spacers. You can add images, you can add anything you want. These are just individual blocks, so they can really go anywhere. So I'm going to click save on that, and that is pretty much as simple as it is. You can see that the function is working perfectly. We've got heading 3 and paragraph text for our question and answer, and it's working exactly as it's supposed to. If you are totally happy with how your text looks and with how your design looks, then you don't need to move on to the next step. But it is worth showing you just in case you do want to add some design changes. So go back to home and then click Design Custom CSS. And we're going to add some custom CSS for markdown blocks. Again, you'll find this in the blog post, so you can go in there and just copy and paste it into your custom CSS area. And I've pretty much just put in some example settings in here so that you can play around with them. But of course, if you know anything about how to write CSS, you can get creative here and do whatever you need to make your questions look the way you want them. You can see here in this code, it says Squarespace block markdown. And that means that this whole piece of CSS is targeting all markdown blocks across your site. So you do need to be a little bit careful adding this CSS, because just like with the original advanced injection code, this will target all markdown blocks across your site. So if you do have any other markdown blocks across your site, this will affect them. So it's really worth knowing that and maybe replacing any other markdown blocks that you do have around your site with something else. If you are advanced in CSS, what you do is you would just target the individual markdown blocks instead of targeting all markdown blocks, but that is pretty advanced and I'm not going to go into that today. You can also see within this code we've got H3 and then some settings, and then we have P and then some settings. So this code is really reliant on the fact that you're using H3, so that's heading 3 like we talked about for the question, and also the P, which is paragraph or body text. If you have changed the font in your body or anywhere else, you will need to change this tag here so it actually targets whatever text you're using. For example, if you used heading 4 here instead, you'd want to change this to heading 4. But I'm going to change it back to P because that's what we're using. So I've just added a few spacing features like margin and padding. I've changed the text alignment to center. I've added a background color, which you can't really see, so I'll just put in a different obnoxious pink color. And I've added a 1 pixel border. So again, just play around with these settings, take whatever ones you want and remove the rest. And for the P, I've just added some padding and margin settings, but again, you can take these and run with them and do whatever you like to make your questions and answers look great. In this case, I'd say my heading 3 is probably a little bit big, so I'd maybe add in a font size, and you can change the font size as simply as that. So I'm going to click save, and that's it. So that is your question and answer boxes. We've entered in the advanced code, we entered in the markdown blocks, and then we put in some custom CSS. Remember, you can click the link in the description below to go to that blog post where I've laid out all of the instructions step by step, including those copy and paste codes. So go check that out. Otherwise, I hope you've got your drop-down boxes working perfectly, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.